Nobody ever tells me anything about this draft marks the beginning of a new era in the SFL. My name is Tyler Falk. I host the program. I hope you are all doing well on this Wednesday evening. This is episode 1. For those that were here last week, you got to witness the prequel, which ultimately jumped off the face of the earth, and that will always live in our memories. The program, the prequel program. But this is episode 1, the first official podcast that should save for later viewing and for your enjoyment. I'll probably have to think of a way to compensate those that were here for the prequel. Maybe some merch is in the store, maybe a t-shirt or mug saying that I was here for the prequel. If you want to join in on the conversation, you can always join the NETMA Discord channel, link to which is at the bottom of your screen now. And you can jump in there. We got a show questions page. If you don't want to be live on the air, you can submit your question through there, or you can jump into the green room and I can move you up into the studio and we can have a live chat and we can answer your questions that way. So first off, we got to see who's all here on this Wednesday evening for the first official show. Your favorite QB, I believe that's OJ Bruin. What up, OJ? Jason France, Viva la France! Congratulations, my friend, on getting drafted to Tulsa. Deep Say, hope you're doing well as well, my friend. Fire Dog, I believe that is Ryan Yosef, my broadcast partner for the SFLM Championship game. How you doing? Kendra Hall, always good to see you. And Kendra and Nate Hall are both here. Welcome, welcome. D-Day 54 is here. X-Max Jet Plane is also here. Bullet Boletsky, the Bullet, getting drafted to Florida. That's a shock. I think that shocked a lot of the SFL nation for Florida to pick up a second running back. Let's see. We got how about Kimbrel? How about Breezy's here? Let's see. CCR71's also here. Coach Craven, Coach, decided to stop on by. Welcome. Let's see. The Fonz, Jason Farnsey, has stopped by. Good evening to you, my friend. Let's see. Who else? Dave Axis. Dave Axis bringing the party over to NETMA. Welcome, Dave. And I think, oh, there we go. David Leathers jumped in there, and then Stephen Hacker jumped in there as well. Welcome to all of you. Hopefully you guys are all doing fantastic. And Gunny, there we go. Can't forget Gunny. Gunny is also here. So I mentioned at the top of the show that nobody ever tells me anything about this draft marking the beginning of a new era in the SFL. And I mean that because we saw a couple of teams go in some very interesting directions. We saw Florida, like I mentioned before, pick up Charlie Boletsky, another running back. Not hearing anything. Okay. Okay, test 1, 2. Okay, you guys can hear me. Okay. Dave, there might be something on. Okay, everyone can hear me. Dave maybe got to reload. Okay, sorry everybody. Just making sure y'all can hear me. All right, so like I said, Florida picked up another running back. Houston went with 2 tight ends and 4 wide receivers. Then we had a few other teams go that similar direction. Another team being DC, picking up Kevin Say with the 2nd overall pick. And a couple other huge surprises. So for me, when I'm looking at this draft, when I'm looking at how teams drafted, we see a couple of teams now. St. Louis being a team now with 2 tight ends. So there's, from what I was talking with a few coaches and owners and GMs, is that teams are now looking to play more they're trying to exploit the tight ends in their offensive formation, is what I'm hearing. And that's going to throw a lot of different packages at teams. And not only that, that's also going to force teams to compensate. So we're going to see a lot more linebackers needing to play coverage instead of them having to do more of a run blitz per se. That's how I'm guessing it'll happen, especially with all the new rule changes, O-line coaches and QB scrambles. We're going to see a lot of change in the SFL, and I think we saw the beginning of it this past weekend. For those of you that don't know, my player named Mike Ryan was drafted, and as most of you already know, Mike Ryan got to go to San Diego with the first overall pick. Speaking on behalf of Mike, he feels honored and humbled to be in San Diego, and he's looking forward to making some plays in San Diego. And there was a question in the show questions page about how much pressure do I feel about being the number one overall draft pick. And for me, that question was raised by Josh Farnsey. For me, there's definitely some pressure, on me to immediately come into San Diego and perform. But it's really going to have to depend on how we all game plan and what the plan is going forward for San Diego. I'm not going to divulge too much information, but depending on how we play our cards in San Diego, how we come together as a team, uh, it'll really show everyone how much we are going to uh, how impactful we are going to be this season as San Diego. And the bar is set pretty high for us. We have a very not going to say easy schedule, but a very uh, doable schedule to go 6-6, 7-5, and make the playoffs. We could easily go the other way around. But no, from what I've been talking to with the rest of the team in San Diego, we look to be fighting day one. So don't underestimate San Diego. I want to bring in my first guest who just jumped into the studio, Jason France. Viva la France! Got drafted by Tulsa. Congratulations, my friend. And Jason, how are you doing? How is Tulsa?
Hey, you know what? Not so bad so far. Really great group of guys. Everybody's really excited to get going and see how the five of us that are new to the team can contribute this year, both sides of the field.
Yeah, what was it like getting drafted? I believe you were drafted in the second round, correct? I think the second
Yeah.
pick in the second round.
Yep.
How is the draft night for you?
Uh, it was. You and I have had this conversation. I've had this conversation with other people. I didn't expect anything out of the draft. If I went somewhere, fantastic. And if I didn't, it's a draft. I knew that going into it. So I didn't have any real high expectations. So that being said, at the end of round one, I went, all right, well, let's see what happens tomorrow. And then to go second pick, um, there was a bit of elation there. It was super exciting. Um, it's good to see 11 weeks preseason and then the entire SFLM season pay off in a sense. So
Yeah,
yeah, it was a good time.
yeah, definitely. A very interesting. I almost want to say almost a strategy choice for Dion, your owner there in Tulsa, to pick 5 players, all with the first name starting in J. How did that all work out?
It's funny. After I got into the locker room and when Dave pointed that out during round three, um, I started watching in the locker room to see if he was going to say anything about it. And a little bit later, he finally did, and I think he even spoke to it on Axis last night that he didn't even realize that that was the case until after the fact. It's just one of those funny coincidences. But yeah, it was definitely interesting to see. We may wind up using that in some promo material coming down the road. We'll see what happens.
Interesting, interesting. So now you got JQ, your quarterback, now over in
Mhm.
Tulsa. What's been your first interactions with him in the locker room format?
I didn't realize that he wasn't a quote unquote local kid. I think he's over in the EU somewhere. So it's been interesting. He's been making a real concerted effort to be on, and I think the time zone is really different. So, you know, unless I'm completely mistaken, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. Um, he's been making a real big effort at being there for everybody, being involved with everybody. Um, and I mean, he seems like a real stand-up guy. I know he is a threat on the field for sure. Uh, and the way that I look at our locker room and our team coming in this year, I think we're really gonna turn some heads, to be completely honest.
Sounds good. X Max Jet Plane in chat asks how many Jays were drafted this year. If I did my math correctly, I want to say 11.
Well,
At
and five of
11.
those were to Tulsa, so
Exactly. Exactly. Uh, so yeah, it was a very, very interesting draft night. Draft nights, I should say, and I really liked your vest and tie when you came on. That was really dapper, really, really sporting of you. You looked really good, my friend.
I rolled in casual on night one. Like I said, expectations being what they were, and then I saw you rocking it, and I was like, nope, I got to come correct on night two.
There we go. There we go. Jason, thanks for hopping on. You're welcome to stay on as long as you want. If you have any other questions, just interrupt me and we'll go back to them. All right?
I got one if you got time.
Oh, I've got time. I've got plenty of time.
Perfect. Let's do it. So you had started off by talking about kind of hitting it how there are some definite changes to the way that the league looks and that the way teams look. With some of the surprising picks and some of the surprising rosters. Now, it was touched on last night too, and one of the examples was how Arizona seemed to have had a pretty good game plan going. They just won the championship 2 seasons ago, and now they're kind of starting to look a lot different with their roster being what it is. And really, if you look at it across the league at the end of this draft run, a lot of teams seem to have really altered what they're kind of known for from a roster perspective, from a what you can expect perspective. And I was just looking to see if you had any thoughts or opinions on why there was such what seems to be such a sudden change in game planning from the standpoint of, again, roster builds and position needs and takes.
Yeah, good question there, Jason. I think it's twofold. One being the recent rule changes with the program that the league uses. For those that don't know, we use All Pro Football 2K8, and the setting we have been using has been the All Pro setting, so about the middle ground. And the league just transitioned or is transitioning to for the next season legend difficulty. And so what the owners have found is that the home and away splits for wins and losses have been very equal, using uh, players that have basic players from an average of players from previous seasons and putting them all into a database and then going through there and just figuring out what works and doesn't work and does moving to legend help the league, and they found it does, and so they're transitioning. And so something that the some of the owners had found is that two tight ends are going to work a little bit more. A more power run game might work a little bit more, and a lot more of the plays that weren't working might work in this new system. So again, this is going to be the first year a lot of teams are going to try out some things, and they're going to find out if that works or doesn't. Uh, Now, the second part to that is, in my opinion, is the minor league. We have a whole bunch of great talent that was in the minor league this season, and a lot of those players coming from season one into season two. And so, what that all leads up to is there being an excess of players, which we saw in the quarterback and running back department of the SFLM. And so, part of the decision making behind DC, let's just use those guys for a second, the DC Dragons expansion franchise for a second. Destro is using his character as the backup running back. And so a bunch of teams, if not all the teams, knew that DC was going to pick a running back. And they have a great running back in Kevin Say. Kevin Say is going to be a fantastic star for DC and is really going to lead the charge in DC, I think. So with going two running backs, that gives a chance for in the later game to put games away. What I mean by that, say they're leading and Kevin Say has been pulled by the analytics to put in the backups. Now you have another player that's progressible to run the ball consistently. So for me, that's some part of the decision behind it. It also might be game planning where now you have two running backs and you could have two running back packages that also help you out throughout the entire game. So that's where I'm thinking, Jason.
Yeah, and I kind of wondered, how much of that came into play, and at the same time, I also kind of wondered if, how much of that too, and obviously, I don't know how much you'll be able to speak to it, but one of the thoughts that crossed my mind with it was when you started having some early surprise picks. Did that throw off everybody else's, draft strategy to the point where they had to start thinking about how do I counter, uh, this number five pick? We didn't expect, or we didn't expect Atlanta to take a second tight end that threw everybody off. And I kind of wonder too how much of that would have been, um, oh, they did that. Well, now we need to look at things a little bit differently from the standpoint of how our roster needs to look by the end of the draft.
Right. Let's go back to Kevin Say with him being picked at number 2. A lot of teams were thinking that they would go in a different direction instead of grabbing the running back right off the bat. Uh, a lot of the people on the panel were also thinking that too. A lot of mock drafts had Kevin Say going later to DC, uh, or a different running back going to DC at a different time. And with the talent that was on defense, they were expecting uh, Kevin to or DC to pick a defensive player there. And so right away, that opens the door for teams like Portland to grab Gary Clem, a linebacker, to really help out their defensive backcourt. Uh, there's different strategies that came into the league that we saw on the draft night, and so it really, with the surprise picks, it either opens the door for certain teams or it closed the door on a few options. Let's just take your pick, for example. Uh, when I was talking with Dion the other day, or when Dave and Dion were talking on Dave's show, they weren't expecting you to fall to you. They were expecting to get you at Tulsa with how things they were thinking were going. And
Right,
so
and on top of that, they were looking at that pick to be a completely different position to begin with.
exactly. So
And
Dion said that, we're going to jump with a chance to take you, and that's how you fell to Tulsa. And I think that also led to St. Louis not not picking Christian Brown early, but taking Guy Clausen right with the sixth pick of the second round because you were taken. Just because the depth at tight ends was going, uh, I'm not going to say declining, but the average tight end was getting slimmer and slimmer.
yeah, and really, what I took away from it is that there was so much that's changing with season 16. There was so much different with the draft class for season 16 with the progression cap being removed and values being so much higher. Which has obviously led to a number of other conversations too. But the one thing that I took away at the end of round three, when I went back and I looked at what rosters now look like, is that this season is going to feel almost experimental, almost brand new. And I take that as a huge positive because you're going to see things that you haven't seen before in the league in games. You're going to see teams, I think, that maybe don't get looked at as being, perennial playoff teams really pushing their way up there just because so much is going to be different. And I think that's going to make for a ridiculous season to not only participate in, but just to watch.
Right. Exactly. All right. Let's get to a few more questions that have populated in the show questions uh, channel in the NETMA server. If you want to join in that server and send me a question, if you want to do it maybe offline, you can go ahead and put there and show questions. Or if you want to be on the show like Jason, you can go ahead and jump in the green room on the server, and then I'll bump you up into the studio and we'll go ahead and chat live. So let's go to Nate Hall, uh, the strong safety from Vancouver. Nate, a fantastic guy. He asked, "What's the backstory on the emotion that came out last night when I asked about Michael Hammer, or is there one?" And yes, that is a very tough question, and that does deserve some explanation. Part of me was upset as a teammate. I was looking for all my teammates to get drafted. And I understand that all all the players within the minors weren't able to be drafted. And I had for the most part accepted it. And what had happened was I had asked uh, Shabazz, the DC representative on the show, why they hadn't picked up Hammer. And for me, not I don't think I had the correct response from when Shabazz was going over it the first time. And for me, I just wanted more information. And I got, in many people's eyes, a little heated. And so for that, I did apologize to Shabazz and apologize to Dave uh, for being a little extra heated. But I just wanted a little bit more information. I should have gone over a different way. Uh, but it's kind of like that's my quarterback, except that's my wide receiver. That's my teammate. And I let my emotions come out probably a little bit more than I would have wanted to. So that's hopefully that answers your question there, Nate, about why I was passionate about Michael Hammer not being drafted. Sadly, Michael Hammer is no longer in the league as he decided that one season in the SFLM was enough and has retired. A couple other questions. Let's see. Jack Lewis says, which team's draft will make the biggest impact on the field starting week one? For me, the 50. Cameron Curtis says 58% of the league. I also say that we're really going to find out how much of an impact 15 rookies is going to have for the DC Dragons. Is that going to help or humble them? I'm not going to say hurt because as an expansion franchise, they're only going to continue to grow. And I think it's a smart idea to get a bunch of rookies for a new team. That way you keep that culture together because with everyone in the minor league, I felt that we had a good sense of community and continuity within the minor league. And so those 15 rookies, they're going to form a great community and a great locker room in DC for a long time to come, I hope, with all those picks. So we're really going to find out how much of an impact DC's picks is going to have on them. Another team that I think has a bunch of impactful rookies. I'm going to have to say with Las Vegas. I mentioned on the prequel show that Las Vegas needed a stellar draft in order to compete in that very dangerous West division that they're in. And I think they had a phenomenal draft. Strong safety Christopher Magel, quarterback Tom Krieg, and the quarterback Colin Pierce. All three of those gentlemen are fantastic people, and they're going to make an impact on the field and behind the scenes as well. We know, if you've been in the minor league, you know Colin Pearson, how impactful he's been with social media and designing a new logo for the San Jose flight. Not official, but it's still a fantastic logo. And if you ever get a chance to take a shot and look at it, I think you would really like what he has designed. But I think Las Vegas has another great rookie class. A couple people are mentioning Portland after the inaugural season they had. They drafted Gary Clem and Leo Morris. Gary Clem being one of the more highly rated, if not the highest rated linebacker in this class, and then Leo Morris is another solid cornerback. So their defense, the Portland Fleet defense, is going to improve from this rookie draft as well. Let's see. We got any other questions? Benjamin Warner says, which team had the biggest steal in the draft? And that could go for a lot of teams. For me, I was thinking on draft night 2 that Ciroc Black falling to London was a steal. I still believe that Ciroc Black to London is a steal. For me, personally, I think DC's draft strategy to not draft a single defensive player not until the 3rd round is going to hurt them. But they've also picked up some really good defensive players in that 3rd round as well. So who am I to say at this point? And I agree with Dave Axis. David Leathers is a steal. Only came in since week 9, but he is an absolute legend. Is a fantastic person, and he really knows his stuff. Is really going to cultivate his player into a fantastic player. So look for David Leathers to make an impact in DC in this upcoming season. Jacob Clear also asked, how much do I hate the San Diego GM? I do not hate the San Diego GM, Jacob Clear. The San Diego GM is fantastic. I've had some very good conversations with Jacob and got to know him a little bit better, and I'm very, very happy to be in San Diego, as Bixby, my assistant, wants to come into the show and say stuff, and I'm not going to let her. But do we got any questions? Anything else that we want to talk about in Twitch chat? Or Jason, do you got anything for me at the moment?
No, I'm just hanging out.
Hanging out. I like it. So who else has jumped in? I see Bo Martin Jr. jumped in. Ashley Jackson jumped in. Hi Ashley, how you doing? Let's see who else we got. Gunny can finally hear me. How you doing, Gunny? Let's see who else has jumped in since we last checked. I think that's about. Oh, there's Chris Lee. Chris Lee jumped in. He's got a fantastic story behind his player, and I'm really happy to see him go to LA. We're division rivals now, and hopefully I can swat a pass down or intercept a ball that's coming to him. But no, congratulations to Chris, and LA really have a fantastic guy. in Chris Lee. Let's see here. Want to talk? Let's talk a little bit about a couple other teams that might not have gotten a whole lot of attention. Queen City, uh, they picked up, I believe, the first fullback in the draft in, I believe it was Hubba Kimbrell going to Queen. No, no, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. Was it? I'm losing my. Oh, that's why I'm looking at round two, not round one. Yeah, Hubba Kimbrell, the fullback, goes to Queen City for their first pick, and I think that's a good move by Queen City, just really trying to shore up that run game and pass protection. And Hubba Kimbrell's the right guy to do it. He's a fantastic person off the field as well. And then Will Todd, we cannot forget about Will Todd, the man who wasn't on any draft board, goes in the first round to Atlanta. And as it turns out, Will was talking with Atlanta throughout the entire minor league season, and Will Todd is now an Atlanta Swarm member. Couple other great picks. Josh Farnsey going to Vancouver and over with Andy Hamilton. I'm sure the prerequisite now for being a Vancouver Legionite is now to get a picture of Andy Hamilton and frame it and wave it on camera every single chance he gets. So another surprise for the first round was Riley Quintero going all the way to Denver. That makes Denver a heck of a lot more dangerous in the passing attack for Riley Quintero to go to Denver. There are a lot of sayings out there that success in the minor league doesn't carry over too well into the pros. Riley Quintero might be one of the first players to put that notion to bed, in my opinion. The second fullback off the board, Charlemagne Cornelius, goes to Sioux Falls. When Queen City took Hubba Kimbrell, it was pretty much a done deal, I think, that Charlemagne would go to Sioux Falls in replace of their fullback taking off. Let's see. Who else can we mention? Oh, Guy Clausen, the pick I called while I was on the draft panel. Instead of them picking up Christian Brown, they got Guy Clausen instead of Christian Brown right away, and Guy Clausen was all happy and all freaking out on live TV. So congratulations to Guy. Let's see. Lone Star get their free safety in Evan Lacey. A fantastic story there. I'm just going to continue to preview Dave's show next Tuesday when he has both myself, Van, and Chris all on the show to tell our stories about our players. A couple other draft highlights. Another one coming from, this time from Jacob Bouvette, the Portland GM on night 2, calling my San Diego Mavericks the Plains. Plains? So look for a very fierce rivalry coming out of the Bay areas from Portland to San Diego, upcoming in the next season. Let's see who else we got. James Richards, the old lineman, goes to Houston. He fell all the way there, and as the first traditional O-line coach, that's really going to help out Houston. Instead of just one offensive lineman, he's going to control 5, all of which will be progressible, only 1 per week. And that right there is just really going to help Houston in all facets of their game. And Houston, I think with that pick and with all their picks, I think they have a good shot of making the playoffs this season. Let's see here. Now, then round 3. Let's check out round 3 real quick. The night of the DC picks, all 12 of them, thrown in with a couple other picks from Tulsa, San Diego, and Florida. We really found out the draft strategy from DC coming into night 3. We knew that they had to get defensive linemen. So they picked up Exodus O'Brien, Cameron Womack, and a player that I hadn't heard from in a long time, that being John Gary. Fun fact about John is that he wants to own 1% of the franchise. So we'll have to see if he can own 1% of the franchise. If they will let him. Hubba asks in Twitch chat, was there ever a doubt for me that I would be the number one overall pick? Uh, Everything's not ever set in stone. Uh, everything's not set in stone. So there was something in the back of my mind that I wouldn't be going number one. Uh, I had been in talks with San Diego, and for me, they were saying, yeah, we're gonna draft you, we're gonna draft you, we're gonna draft you, and I was looking forward to it. But at the same time, I'm like, something could come in at the very last second and change all of that. I noticed that a few people have been posting in chat. I think I have an idea of why that is. I downloaded a new photo and put it into OBS, the back behind the scenes for all you guys out there, and it'll be on the outro here. And I had to crop it a certain way, and I think that's why it's all black on your guys' screen. So, for those of you that are on mobile devices, might not be able to see everything. So, that I will have to change when we get back there. But for those of you that can see it, if you guys want to post the link to the NETMA show server, Discord server, that way everybody that's new can jump in, that would be fantastic. In fact, I'm going to go and do that right now for all you guys as well, in case you do want to join this chat or come hang out with us. And a lot of good things are coming down the pipe. And hopefully we can see you all there in the server. Jason, you got anything? Anything for me?
Start thinking about it.
Okay, all right.
I'll start thinking of something for you.
Okay, sounds good.
I'd hate for the program to stall out on you.
There we go. There we go. It sounds like from Kendra that they're not getting any sound on any mobile devices. Interesting. So this is why this is episode 1. We're going to learn a lot from this, right? We're going to learn a lot as we'll have to adjust, and I'll have to learn how to get better with the chat as well. A couple of different questions from, we got Bo Martin Jr. in Twitch chat asking, are there any picks that I felt were overrated or too early? Personally, we've heard that from a couple people, not just myself, that a running back for DC at 2 might have been a little bit too early. They upon one-on-one conversations and off the air conversations, they were saying they were thinking that if they didn't draft Kevin right away at 2, it was going to be a problem for them. It was going to be they weren't going to be able to get Kevin at a later time slot, so that's why they went Kevin there. So for me, it's definitely an interesting take, and I respect it. But I do think it might be a little bit too soon as far as the draft strategy is concerned. I don't really think everyone deserved to be picked. In my opinion, I think a couple of underrated picks happened in the 3rd round by that same DC franchise. We already mentioned David Leathers being a very underrated pick. I also am going to say that Kay Marion is another underrated pick for DC. She's going to also be their social media director, and she is absolutely a fantastic person to get to know for what I am hearing. And DC had themselves a gem in those 2 picks. As far as everybody else is concerned, I think Charlie Bullopoletsi going to Florida is definitely an underrated pick, and for Florida, it's a definite change of pace as they go to more of a more balanced look coming up, and so that'll be interesting to see what happens there. Let's see. I really don't have anyone else for me that was really picked too early or too late. They all, in my opinion, believe to go where I thought they were going to go. A couple people did surprise me that I mentioned before, but uh, the teams drafted on need. I might have changed one or two players, but that's up to teams finding out uh, who they want on their team compared to somebody else, and we're really going to see how that all plays out. As far as free agency goes, I know that was mentioned. I haven't delved too deep into free agency a whole lot. Um, I do want to say though that let's see if I can find a few people for you guys. Finding the signings page is always a fun thing to do with so many channels in sight. I think the whole free agency drama created by uh, Mr. Eddie Gage about being the last free agent pick. I thought that was the story of free agency uh, being a story that we could watch throughout the entirety of free agency. I did want to mention that it was from Sioux Falls. I think that really stirred the pot a little bit for a number of teams. Him leaving Sioux Falls and going to the West Coast. But I really, as far as the signings go, I really don't see anyone too crazy. Jeff Melanishin going to Louisiana. I think that's a good move for Jeff and the Louisiana franchise. Um, Kramer Jackman going to Denver. Definitely a eyebrow raiser there. And then Josh Miller doing the same thing. I think is definitely an eyebrow raiser there as well. But I don't really think there were too many surprises in free agency this year. I think it was all pretty well handled on all facets of the game plan. Let's see. Demand via Gunny asks, let's see, early season surprise. As far as who I think is going to be the early season surprise, I'm going to back San Diego. During the schedule review, I mentioned that San Diego had uh, as far as on analytics were concerned, had the easiest schedule throughout the entire league, and so we might see a early surgence of the Mavericks uh, going forward. But Demond, your Houston franchise, I think that's going to be a surprise too with all your draft picks. Are we going to see you guys make a run for the playoffs, especially with your new O-line coach? And then for Vancouver, can they maintain success after uh, we'll say the leave of absence for number 86, Rich Pratchard? And can they continue the success in Vancouver, north of the border? And can they take hold of the division in the Pacific Division? Let's see. As far as other surprises go, a couple of the two quarterbacks that were picked, two or three quarterbacks that were picked, JQ, Christian Brown, uh, how are they going to fare in their first season? Or are they going to make a case to be rookie of the year at quarterback, or are they going to be more, uh, we'll call it coasting? Are they going to coast into their rookie campaign?
Well, if I've got anything to say about it, Jay and I are going to be making it real easy on each other for that run.
There we go. There we go. Beaumont Jr. says, who is your way too early pick for season 16 champion? I can't choose San Diego. Let's see. Way too early. Way too early season pick. Season 16 champion pick. That's a very good question because Sioux Falls only really had to sign a fullback or a rookie fullback, and I think Sioux Falls is going to make another run for the championship. I hope they do get there. Maybe a surprise for me getting into the playoffs and maybe making a deep run of the playoffs for me. Uh, I think Fort Worth has a very nice chance. I think a good chunk of the South Division has a fantastic chance of going deep into the playoffs this season, especially with all the players they picked up. So we're really going to have to see how those teams get on with the new changes and with those new players. Another team, I'll go with one last team. I think probably is uh, a shot to make the playoffs and maybe make a deep run. Uh, I'm thinking St. Louis or Tulsa. I think they are both uh, teams on the rise, and Tulsa for me uh, had a very strong draft, very strong draft, and I think they're definitely going to make the playoffs. I think they're going to at least win one playoff game. Again, way too early predictions here. We'll go week by week as we go into the regular season, and we'll have to figure out what happens as we get closer to opening day. How about ask which season 15 playoff team is more likely to slump in season 16? So let's just take a look at the playoff teams. I don't think Baltimore is going to slump. They'll be back in the playoffs. Uh, Atlanta, uh, they're on the bubble. I think Atlanta's on the bubble. We'll have to see how that all plays out. Uh, I mentioned it at the schedule release show. Florida needs to have a different plan of attack, otherwise they'll be out of the playoffs. With them drafting Charlie Bullet Piletsky and them going to maybe more of a conservative approach to the offensive game plan, they might be back in the playoffs more easily than I was thinking originally. Let's see here. Charleston didn't make the playoffs last year, I don't think, but I think they might make the playoffs this year. Let's see. Maybe a shock team. Oh, a shock team I don't think makes the playoffs this year. Let's go. This is tough. This is really tough to pick one team. I'm thinking Lone Star might have a tougher time in especially a very tough uh, conference, the Tex-Mex division. Like I mentioned earlier, they might go all the way, but I think they also uh, might falter a little bit depending on how everything plays out. We'll have to see what happens. Hopefully not for Axis and everyone in Denton, Texas. Uh, I think it's all in or bust for the Lone Star Glory. Let's see, Jason, you said you were cooking up something. Do you got anything?
Yeah, so I feel like this is fairly relatable to the conversation, but there's been a lot of talk. It's been kind of surface talk, but talk nonetheless of depth chart uh, coming to teams in the potentially near future. What are your thoughts on if you think that that'll be implemented? When potentially you think that might be implemented?
Yeah, that's another good question, Jason. I think more of a depth chart like that is probably 2 seasons away, in my opinion, because of the technological limitations of All Pro. And so I think as we grow, as the league continues to grow and expand as it currently is doing, we'll have to see if that uh, that means it'll be sooner than 2 seasons. But for more players to get in and get actual game time, I think it's going to be I think it's going to be 2 seasons. Does that answer your question there, Jason?
Yeah. Do you know off the top of your head, and maybe somebody can drop it in chat if you don't, what the game will allow as far as players per roster?
Players per roster. The game itself, I believe, allows 43 players per roster. That includes punter, kicker, and everybody else. So it's
So
definitely not.
realistically, you could have two per position.
Realistically, yes. Realistically, yes, you could.
And then the reason that I thought about that is just because of the fact that all the conversation around uh, you know guys that again you've got the quarterback, running back, backlog in the SFLM right now. Guys coming in wanting to play those positions. It's just it's dangerous. You kind of have to at this point expect a second season. Uh, just because of the fact that there's so many of them and so little space, to get drafted at that position. And obviously, that's one of the big things that started that depth chart conversation too. That problem. So, I just see that, being able to really bring a lot more talent in faster. I think, huge benefit to the players on the field, being able to, uh, you know, can't run every play all game, all day. Uh, and, so to do, something like what BC did with their two running backs, you don't see that a lot. Uh, it makes it nice to be able to, just swap out playing around that.
Right,
But
exactly.
really more really more around the backlog is what I was thinking of certain positions, and just as we've already seen a bunch of guys come into the league first time coming into the minors already. So I think as far as player numbers are concerned for the minors this year, I think we're looking like trending it towards what we had for season 2. And if that's the case, that's gonna be a lot of guys on the board, and then I got to wonder how many positions are even going to be open come that
Right,
time next season.
right. Gunny in Twitch chat asks, how many wins for my San Diego Mavericks? I'm saying over under. I'm saying over under 5. I'm saying 5 is a good number to reach. I think 5 would be a good benchmark for us. Um, I definitely believe that our team can make the playoffs our first season. Uh, Based on everyone that I've been talking to in the locker room, we definitely have a fantastic locker room in San Diego. Um, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens. But I'm thinking over under 5 wins for the San Diego Mavericks. Let's see. Did I miss anyone? Let's see. I don't think I missed any questions in Twitch. If I did, go ahead and let me know. Oh, there we go. One more question from Bernard Smith. Do we have a rookie of the year? And if not, and can we? And also, who do you think would get it if we had? I'm thinking, Bernard, you're referring to the minor league rookie of the year, I believe. If I were to go offensive, I believe it definitely would be Riley Quintero as far as the offensive rookie of the year in the minor league. That would be my pick. As far as defensive player goes, there was a lot of good defensive players uh, in this minor league season. It was very competitive uh, throughout the entire season. There was a couple of people I'm trying to find their names. I'm not saying myself. I definitely was not. Uh, Mike Ryan was definitely. There was talks about him being there, but I don't think Mike Ryan, the player, was of that caliber, of that top tier caliber. I think. Um, let's see. Peanut Say had a good year. Let's see. I'm trying to remember names off the top of my head and looking at uh, the draft. Who do you guys think? Who do you guys think? Jason, who do you think was your defensive rookie of the year?
I Riley is a guy that you have to put in that conversation, if not just default to. Uh, you've got and it was tough for me. I can really only say anything about a lot of the offensive guys because that was where I was kind of biased to when I was watching games. So, but you know, um, you know, and again, this is going to sound biased too, but Bernard, the second half of the season is in that conversation on the defensive end for sure.
Yep. A lot of people are saying Cliff Grizzly. I'd have to agree with that. I also think
Yep, absolutely.
that Tom Blitzkrieg, had a phenomenal season at strong safety. He's now a cornerback, so maybe we'll see some cornerback blitzing over in Las Vegas. Uh, we'll have to see. Let's see. Peanut Say again mentioned him. Achilles, the Greek Nightmare, had a fantastic season. See Maverick Hughes, another solid player. Let's see who else. Who else? Christopher Maggle, 7th pick overall, but that's also because he was fantastic on the field as well. So I think there's a good number of defensive players that could easily have taken that spot.
Yeah, I know I wouldn't be in charge of putting that ballot together. That's for sure.
Okay. Charlie Boletsky asks, player build or relationship building, off the field skills, which is more important? This draft had a mix of strategies. And I'd have to agree. Depending on who you are, I think, depending on who you are, is going to contribute to how you go about building your reputation in the SFL. For me, I got in with Mike Ryan as a player week before the league, the SFLM regular season started. So I wasn't able to build my player a whole lot, and for the most part, I don't think player build definitely affects. In my opinion, it definitely affects where you go and how early you do get drafted, but it's not as important as how you are as a person. So if you are a player or a person that is going to be a cancer in a locker room or be a cancer in live chat, then you're going to cause issues amongst the league because everybody talks. Owners talk, the commission talks, players talk. If you make a mess of how you act in chat, that's going to affect where you go. So I think the I think Coach put it perfectly right there. Build can be fixed, but blank is forever. And I'll let Coach go ahead and say that one. I think that's just about gonna do it here for episode 1. Jason, you got any last words for me?
No, man. Congrats again. Thanks for having me on tonight.
And thank you for being on tonight as well, Jason. And for all of you that joined as well, thank you. Thank you for coming on episode 1 of NETMA. Have a Merry Christmas and a happy holiday season. And for me, that's going to do it. So until next time, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, ladies and gentlemen.